fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The heat was intense, expected, I suppose, but still, the reality was a shock. I'd always imagined it as more of a symbolic burning, a spiritual torment. This was physical. My new, flimsy cotton shift clung to my skin, already soaked with sweat, and the smell sulfur and something acrid like burnt hair. I blinked, trying to adjust to the dim, flickering light. Around me, a teeming mass of I assumed they were damned souls, writhed and groaned. They looked remarkably ordinary, just perpetually miserable. Then a creature detached itself from the shadows. It was small, pathetically so, barely 4 feet tall, with stubby horns that looked more comical than threatening. Its skin was a sickly green, and its eyes, though glowing with an inner fire, held a weariness that was almost palpable. "Welcome to hell," it croaked, its voice surprisingly high-pitched. "Name?" "Eleanor Vance," I replied, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "But there must be some mistake. I've lived a good life. I helped people. I volunteered. The demon, for what else could it be, sighed, a sound like escaping steam. Yeah, we hear it all the time. Look, lady, paperwork's a nightmare. Celestial accounting isn't what it used to be. New policy. You gotta do your demoning before going to heaven." He thrust something into my hands, a pitchfork, a rusty, chipped, utterly ridiculous pitchfork. What am I supposed to do with this?" "Demoning does torment some souls, stoke the fires of despair. You know the usual, get enough bad karma points, or whatever they're calling them upstairs, and you get your golden ticket to paradise. Quote is 10 souls this cycle, chop chop." And with that he scurried away, leaving me standing there, alone, holding the most absurd weapon in the history of damnation. I stared at the pitchfork, 10 souls, 10 people I had to actively make miserable. My stomach churned. I was a librarian, for God's sake, not a torturer. Days turned into weeks, maybe months. Time felt distorted here. I wandered through the infernal landscape, avoiding eye contact with the wretched souls. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I tried to offer comfort, to whisper words of hope, but even that felt wrong, a cruel mockery in this hopeless place. My own despair grew with each passing day. I was trapped, damned if I did, damned if I didn't. Then I saw him. He stood apart from the milling crowds, his back to me, tall, impossibly broad-shouldered even in this realm of shadows. His skin was the color of obsidian, and 2 immense, leathery wings were folded tightly against his back. A true demon, not one of those pathetic little imps. This was something else. He turned, and my breath caught in my throat. His face was beautiful, cruel, and utterly captivating. His eyes, a molten gold, burned into me, stripping away my pretense of composure. "Lost little angel," he drawled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through my bones. "I am not an angel," I stammered, clutching the pitchfork behind my back. He chuckled, a sound devoid of amusement. "Aren't you, holding that pathetic little implement? You reek of virtue, Eleanor Vance." He knew my name. "I'm Belial," he said, extending a hand. His fingers were long and elegant, tipped with razor-sharp claws. I hesitated, then shook his hand. A jolt of pure energy surged through me, leaving me breathless. "So what brings a saint like you to this delightful establishment?" he asked, his golden eyes gleaming. I told him about the mistake, about the quota, about my utter inability to inflict pain. Belial listened, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he laughed again, a genuine, hearty laugh that echoed through the desolate landscape. "You're quite the anomaly, Eleanor Vance, a virtuous soul doomed to play demon." "What am I supposed to do?" I pleaded. He considered me for a long moment. "Perhaps I can help." And so began my unlikely apprenticeship under Belial, Lord of Lies. He taught me the subtle art of manipulation, the power of suggestion, the devastating effect of a carefully placed word. He showed me how to exploit weaknesses, how to prey on fears. I hated it, every fiber of my being recoiled from the tasks he set me, but with each successful demoning, each point earned, the possibility of escape grew closer, and the closer I got to Belial. I learned he wasn't just a torturer. He was a strategist, a tactician, a rebel against the stagnant order of hell. He harbored a deep-seated resentment towards the powers that be, both above and below, and he saw in me, in my inherent goodness, a weapon against them. "Virtue can be just as potent as vice, Eleanor," he told me one night as we sat by a fire that burned eternally but gave off no warmth. It can inspire hope, ignite rebellion, and those are far more dangerous than any amount of torture. Our training sessions became late-night conversations, whispered confessions under the infernal stars. I learned about his past, his betrayals, his ambitions. He learned about my life, my dreams, my quiet acts of kindness. We were opposites, fire and ice, darkness and light, and yet we were drawn to each other, an irresistible pull that defied logic and reason. One day, Belial presented me with my final task, a high-profile soul, a corrupt politician who had amassed power through deceit and cruelty. "He deserves everything you can dish out," Belial said, his voice hard. "Don't hold back." I found the politician in his designated circle of torment, surrounded by demons who were eagerly catering to his every whim. It was a bizarre scene, a perverse parody of earthly power. I approached him, pitchfork in hand. He sneered at me, recognizing my hesitation. "What's this, an angel come to save me? Don't make me laugh." I looked at him, at his smug, self-satisfied face, and I knew I couldn't do it, not like this, not with hatred, not with glee. Instead, I lowered the pitchfork and spoke to him calmly, rationally. I pointed out the flaws in his logic, the inconsistencies in his justifications, the emptiness of his ambition. I challenged him to confront the consequences of his actions, to acknowledge the suffering he had caused. Slowly, gradually, his bravado crumbled. He began to weep, not from physical pain, but from a profound sense of regret. I had reached him, not with torture, but with truth. When I returned to Belial, he was waiting for me, his expression a mixture of surprise and something else, something that looked suspiciously like pride. "You did it," he said, his voice soft. "You reached him without resorting to cruelty." "Is that good?" I asked, unsure of myself. He smiled, a genuine, breathtaking smile that transformed his face. "It's extraordinary, Eleanor. You've finished your demoning, but not in the way they expected. You've undermined their entire system." The ground began to tremble. A beam of light pierced through the darkness, illuminating me. "You're free to go," Belial said, his voice tinged with regret. I looked at him, at the demon who had become my teacher, my confidant, my friend. More than a friend, I didn't want to leave. "What about you?" I asked. "Will you come with me?" He shook his head. "I belong here, Eleanor. My fight is here." "Then I'll stay," I said, surprising even myself. He stared at me, his golden eyes filled with disbelief. "You can't. You've earned your place in heaven." "I don't want heaven," I said, stepping towards him. "I want you." He closed the distance between us, his hands cupping my face. "Are you sure, Eleanor? This isn't some misguided act of charity." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I whispered. He kissed me then, a kiss that tasted of fire and brimstone, of rebellion and hope. A kiss that sealed our fate, binding a saint to a demon, a light to the darkness. And as the ground shook and the beam of light faded, I knew that my journey had just begun. My demoning days were over. Now it was time to fight for something more, something far greater than redemption. It was time to fight for love, for us, for a new kind of heaven forged in the fires of hell.